Hey everyone, welcome back. It's another edition of the Pick Six. I'm your host, Wobby, inside the field house at TCO Performance Center. With these, your questions, let's get to work. Question number one comes from Joey in Cottage Grove, Minnesota. Do you think Anthony Harris made his case to be a starting safety next year? Or do you think they will try to address the position in the draft or free agency? Anthony Harris played really well. He came in for an injured Andrew Sendejo, and the Vikings defense did not miss a beat. So we have a luxury at this position. We have Harrison Smith, who's the best safety in the NFL, and then we have a really quality starter next to him with Anthony Harris or Andrew Sendejo. Plus, we have Jaron Kearse as our big nickel slash safety. Lots of depth in the back end of the Vikings secondary. Question number two comes from Art in New York. What are the odds of Chad Beebe being the third option at wide receiver this upcoming season? This will definitely be a fun position to watch unfold in the offseason and in training camp. Wide receiver 3, Laquan Treadwell, Chad Beebe, Aldrick Robinson, draft pick, free agent signing. I don't know who it's going to be, but Chad Beebe's definitely going to have a shot to compete for it. Our next question comes from John. If you were the general manager, where would you place the emphasis this offseason in both free agency and the draft? Well, I wouldn't neglect any part of the Vikings roster. You never want to do that. You want to build up as much talent and depth as you can in every place. But one area to watch is in the trenches for the Vikings this offseason. That's the offensive line and the defensive line, and you can even throw in some linebackers and some tight ends. I think the Vikings are going to try and get bigger and tougher in the trenches. Our next question comes from Twitter. AJs Dad. What's up, AJs Dad? With a defensive-minded coach, will the Vikings ever lead the league in scoring? The most important coach is going to be the offensive line coach. Well, here's one thing to consider. One of the highest scoring teams in the NFL this year was the New England Patriots, and they have a defensive-minded coach, Bill Belichick. They also have a Hall of Fame quarterback, so that can help. Here's the deal. The Vikings don't need to be the highest scoring team in the league to win a bunch of games because their defense is so good. So it's not about ranking number one in offense or defense. It's about playing complementary football and having an identity and playing to the strength of that identity. With a great defense, the Vikings will be in a good position in 2019. Our next question comes from Valerie, Yorktown Heights, New York. What can our coaches do to get that eye of the tiger and that must-win mentality again? Coach Zimmer talked about this at his end of the season press conference. He wants the Vikings to play with more of an edge and a chip on their shoulder in 2019. I think two things can help. Mike Zimmer and his coaching staff, the way they structure practices and the things they say to players in team meetings, that can help. Here's another thing that's going to help, and it's an external thing. The Vikings are going to be underdogs in 2019. Not many people are going to pick them to win the division and get back to the playoffs. That's going to help this team play with a chip on its shoulder. Our final question comes from Lanny in Minneapolis. Any takeaways from the Patriots and Rams making it to the Super Bowl? Yeah, a couple things. First of all, the Vikings played both of these teams and lost to both of these teams this season. So we had a front row view for how good these teams are. They both have good coaches and they both have good quarterbacks. Those types of teams usually make it to the Super Bowl. The second thing is they both are really good up front with their offensive lines. Tom Brady has not been sacked in 2 playoff games this season, and the Rams have had the best offensive line in the NFL, or one of the best offensive lines for the last 2 seasons. So those 2 teams very good up front, and that's why I answered the question earlier. If I was the GM, I'd focus on the trenches. That'll do it for this week's edition of the Pick Six. We'll be back next week with another edition, so please continue to submit your questions into the email address at the bottom of the screen. In the meantime, stay tuned to Vikings.com for more coverage of your favorite team, including our coverage of the Senior Bowl. We have a crew down in Mobile, Alabama, covering the Senior Bowl, so you can get caught up on all of the draft-related news happening down in Mobile, Alabama. See you next week.